Hi everyone, I'm Renee Lindhorst and this is my review of Plugged In, Technology, Rhetoric, and Culture in a Post-Human Age. It's edited by Lynn Warsham and Gary A. Olson. This is what it looks like. The book is divided into 3 parts, and I'm going to focus basically on the first chapter of part 1 because it sets up the rest of the book for some of the ideas that the authors all want you to think about. But just to briefly go through the 3 parts, part 1 is cyber bodies in a post-human age, and it examines how technology is inalterably redefining what it means to be a human being. Part 2, rhetoric and writing in a digital age, explores the effects of technology on the workings of pedagogy, rhetoric, and public discourse. Part 3 is called network culture, and it addresses some of the ways that technology is redefining culture. Okay, so the first essay, Cybernetics, Ethos and Ethics by Christy S. Fleckenstein. It starts with a metaphor, and the metaphor is of Lewis Carroll's bread and butterfly creature. And so this gnat is talking to Alice in the story, and he says, well, pay attention to your feet. Right next to your feet is this little creature. It's a bread and butterfly, and its body is made out of crust, and its head is made out of sugar, and its wings are made out of bread and butter. And so Alice asks the gnat, well, how does it live? Well, and the gnat says, well, it lives on weak tea and cream. And so Alice was really worried about the bread and butterfly, and like her fears came true. Like the bread and butterfly went and dumped its head into the tea, and its head dissolved. And so you see that there's a blurring of lines there, and that's what this is a metaphor for. It's a blurring, it's what's happening in our culture. There's a blurring of boundaries and an abandonment of identities. It's hard to decide who has the greatest ethical authority because reality is different for everyone, and everybody has their own interpretation of what is ethical. So what's ethical to my dad, or what's not ethical to my dad, may be ethical for me. It's usually, that's how it goes. But time, everybody's concept of time is different. So what was ethical for my dad back in like the 70s probably stayed with him, and he's carrying that kind of 70s culture and that 70s framework with him. Not everyone is like that. I'm not saying my dad is like that, but I'm just using that as an example. But what these texts do is they ask you to apply these theories to your own life. And so I had to think of examples that were kind of real to me. So Fleckenstein addresses these issues of character and ethicality, and she thinks that the problem can be resolved through Aristotle's ethos and Batersonian cybernetics. And out of these 2 epistemologies comes a concept of cyber ethos. And cyber ethos basically demands people to recognize that identity is fluid-like, and it demands that people stay grounded to ethics and ethicality, because without those things, it's impossible to survive. So the solution is that people take responsibility for themselves. Cyber ethos isn't a policing. It's not a policing, but it's basically, what I took from this chapter was that it's basically a call for good manners, because she uses a lot of Aristotle ethics. So or philosophy. So he says that the best kind of persuasion is done through good character, having good character. So Fleckenstein also goes into like personal assessment. We should all be able to do personal assessments, and technology can help us with. Okay, so chapter 2, Screening Information Bodies and Writing in Network Culture by Jennifer L. Bay. She actually talks about the monitoring society through Fleckenstein's kind of model. Fleckenstein has this model of monitoring communication between man and machine and man and man through machine. And so Bay basically says, well, you should pay attention to what's going on because you can tell a lot from these things. And you may not be able to understand the language right away or understand how to read. I guess it's a reading of society through these things right away, like through Wikipedia conversations or whatever, or Facebook or whatever. You may not be able to understand the language right away and how to interpret what's going on, but the more you do it, the better you'll be at it. So in chapter 3, our cyber bodies, ourselves, conceptual grounds for teaching commodities to write, by Stanley D. Harrison. He talks about a new kind of student, and he refers to his new kinds of students as cyborgs, or maybe these are the students he doesn't want to occur. This is where I think he thinks that his students are headed, maybe. But cyborg is kind of a harsh term. It's a transhumanist term, and he says that basically what's going to happen is people are going to be self-absorbed, self-destructive, narcissism. I mean, all kinds of bad isms and occurs with the newer kinds of students, I guess. Cyborgs. So he says the only way to intervene with these things is to use post-humanist pedagogy. 4. The Available Means of Persuasion by David M. Sheridan, Jim Rodolfo, and Anthony Michel envisions a culture that effectively critiques mass media, consumerism, divisions of labor, copyright, reproduction, distribution, and they argue that rhetorical education, English teachers, can help prepare non-specialists, students, and citizens to deploy a multimodal rhetoric effectively within the public arena. Consumerism is changing and it's being redefined. So with these little the flip camera, I guess there's an example of Hollywood in the book, and basically, so the Hollywood's just like this mean money-making machine, right? So what happens when you hand the audience, every member in the audience, a little flip camera? They run around and make their movies like, what was the Blair Witch Project? I mean, it was very low budget. So basically, with technology, with these little instruments, there's a huge shift of power, of money, of experience. And so instead of the student or person sitting in front of the TV and feeling like they're taking part in something through the TV, you hand them a gadget and they start making their own movie, and they're participating in their own life, and they're having a new experience, and they're participating in the world around them. So it's a really powerful, effective tool. So part 3 is called Network Culture, and basically we're all compositionists. We all need to pay attention to each other and take Zion culture really seriously. Because there's people like groups like post-feminist concepts and new emerging theorists that are just kind of coming out and with their brand new ideas about technology. So there's controversy because, I mean, of credibility and stuff like that. So, but I don't know. go. So that's it. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.